The story begins in a quiet suburban neighborhood, in a house that always seemed to echo with both laughter and argument. The family that lived there wasn't extraordinary at first glance, but once someone spent time around them, they would notice the unique undercurrents that tied them together. The eldest sibling was Aaron, 24 years old, sharp-featured, ambitious, and someone who always believed he deserved more than what life had offered so far. He had a charisma about him that often got him out of difficult situations, though it sometimes felt like that same charm was used as a weapon. He worked irregularly, moving from one job to another, rarely sticking around long enough to build stability. For all his smooth talk and confident stance, Aaron carried a restlessness that made him unpredictable. Then there was his younger sister, Maya, the narrator of this unfolding storm. At 20, she was in college, more of an observer than a participant in the endless drama of her brother's life. She often described herself as the quiet shadow in the corner of family gatherings. While Aaron thrived on attention, Maya preferred to stay out of the spotlight, taking mental notes of everything around her. It would be through her eyes that the story of what happened with the pregnant girl would be told. Their parents, Robert and Elaine, were the anchors of the family, at least they tried to be. Robert was in his late 50s, a stern but fair man who worked as a high school history teacher. His values revolved around honesty and responsibility, and he often clashed with Aaron over what he saw as recklessness. Elaine, on the other hand, was more compassionate, though not blind to her son's flaws. She worked part-time at a library and was known for her patience and calm, though her patience had worn thin in recent years when dealing with Aaron's choices. The family had weathered their share of arguments, but nothing prepared them for what was about to shake their household. The catalyst of everything was a girl named Lila. She was 19, with a round face, kind eyes, and a tendency to speak with a blunt honesty that sometimes made people uncomfortable. She wasn't someone the family knew well. She had appeared in Aaron's life about half a year earlier, drifting into the picture without much explanation. Aaron never introduced her formally, nor did he act as though he was particularly serious about her. To him, she seemed like one of many short-lived attachments, someone to pass the time with. But Lila was not just a temporary guest in Aaron's story. She had secrets, and soon those secrets would demand attention. What had happened before the eruption was, in Maya's words, just Aaron being Aaron. He would often disappear for days, returning home with vague explanations and a cocky grin. He rarely shared details about who he was with or where he had been. The family had long grown accustomed to his ways, although Robert never stopped lecturing him on responsibility. On one particularly cold evening, Aaron came home storming, slamming the front door behind him. His voice was sharp, carrying frustration as he announced to anyone listening that he was done with that girl. Maya, sitting quietly on the couch with her textbooks, looked up curiously. Elaine came from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a towel, asking what had happened. Robert appeared moments later, already bracing for an argument. Aaron explained in fragments. He said the girl, Lila, was too clingy, too demanding, and that he couldn't deal with her anymore. He claimed she made up stories, tried to trap him with her problems, and that he had finally decided to cut her off. I told her to leave me alone. I'm not her savior. I'm not her babysitter, he declared, his tone sharp, his eyes avoiding his father's stern gaze. The family didn't press much that night. It sounded like just another of Aaron's fleeting dramas. They had heard this tone before, seen the same dismissive gestures. To Maya, it was almost routine, though something in the way Aaron's voice trembled gave her pause. He seemed shaken in a way he usually wasn't after such breakups. And then, weeks later, Lila appeared again. Not in their living room, but in whispers, in phone calls, in the way Aaron's friends glanced at him with raised brows. Rumors began to stir. That Lila was pregnant, and that she claimed the child was Aaron's. It was the kind of claim that could fracture a family. And it did. The news didn't come directly from Lila at first. It was a neighbor who mentioned it, passing Elaine in the grocery store. Then another mother from town spoke of it casually, as if it were common knowledge. By the time Robert heard, he was furious. Not at Lila, but at Aaron for creating such chaos. Maya overheard her parents arguing late into the night, Robert's voice low and stern, Elaine's rising with worry. Aaron, when confronted, laughed. He dismissed it as nonsense, called it a pathetic attempt at attention, and swore he had nothing to do with it. "She's lying," he said. "She wants something from me, and she thinks this is the way to get it." But the tension in the house grew thicker. Even Maya, who tried to stay neutral, began to wonder what truth lay beneath the surface. She had seen the way Aaron looked at Lila before, the way his bravado sometimes softened when he thought no one noticed. And so, the family's fragile stability began to crack, pulled apart by suspicion, pride, and the looming shadow of a possible child that no one was prepared to accept. The evening after the rumor spread like wildfire, the family gathered in the living room. The air was heavy, thick enough to cut through, and no one wanted to be the first to break the silence. Aaron sat slouched on the couch, one leg draped over the other, acting as if he had been dragged into an interrogation he didn't deserve. Maya sat on the armchair near the corner, clutching a blanket around her as though it might shield her from the storm. Robert stood, pacing, his hands clenched behind his back. Elaine sat opposite Aaron, her face pale, eyes searching her son's expression for any trace of honesty. Finally, Robert spoke, his voice sharp. "Aaron, tell me the truth. Is it yours?" Aaron rolled his eyes and gave a short laugh. "Dad, for the 100th time, no. She's making this up. Do you honestly think I'd be stupid enough to let something like that happen?" Elaine leaned forward, her hands gripping the edge of the sofa cushion. "You were with her for months, Aaron. You brought her around, even if you didn't call it serious. Now she's saying she's pregnant, and people are talking. We need to know the truth." Aaron shrugged, picking at his fingernails, avoiding their eyes. "She's desperate. She wants someone to take care of her, and she thinks throwing my name into this mess will get her sympathy. That's all this is." Robert's voice deepened, his patience wearing thin. "You can laugh all you want, but this isn't a joke. This is a human life being spoken about. If she is telling the truth, she's not—" Aaron snapped, sitting up suddenly, his composure cracking. His voice rose, startling Maya. "She's lying. She's manipulating everyone because she knows I'm not going to stick around for her drama. I told her I was done, and this is her revenge. That's all." Elaine's voice softened, but her words cut sharper. "Aaron, when I looked at her, when she came to the house that one time, she didn't seem like the kind of girl who would make up something like this." Aaron's jaw tightened. "You don't know her like I do. She plays sweet, but when she doesn't get her way, she'll do anything. I swear to you, I'm not the father." The silence that followed was suffocating. Robert finally sat down, rubbing his forehead. "You've lied before, Aaron. How can we believe you now?" That stung. Aaron's face hardened, and he pointed a finger at his father. "You've always thought the worst of me. Always. No matter what I say, you're ready to call me a liar. Maybe you should ask yourself why I don't tell you anything anymore." Elaine quickly interjected, her voice trembling. "Stop it, both of you. This isn't about your grudges. It's about that girl and whether there's going to be a child who has no one." Maya hadn't spoken yet. She felt the weight of every word, but her voice came out small. "I saw the way you looked at her, Aaron, once. It wasn't the way you look at all the other girls. Maybe you cared more than you want to admit." Aaron snapped his head toward her, his eyes sharp, as though her quiet observation had struck deeper than her parents' accusations. He said nothing, just stared at her for a moment before scoffing and turning away. Elaine sighed and stood, moving toward the kitchen. "We need to talk to her. If she's lying, we'll know. But if she isn't, we can't just turn our backs. Not as a family." Robert nodded reluctantly, though Aaron groaned loudly. "You're seriously considering entertaining this nonsense? You're going to drag her into our house again and let her spin her sob story? Unbelievable." Robert glared at him. "If she has the courage to face us, then you'll sit here and listen. If you're so sure it's a lie, then you have nothing to fear." Aaron slumped back into the couch, muttering curses under his breath. The walls of defiance around him looked strong, but Maya noticed the twitch in his jaw, the slight shake in his hands. He wasn't as calm as he pretended to be. Later that night, long after the argument had fizzled into silence, Maya overheard her parents whispering in the kitchen. Elaine's voice cracked. What if it is his Robert? What if she's telling the truth and he's just too proud, too scared to admit it? Robert sighed heavily. Then we'll deal with it. But I swear, if he's lying to us, if he drags us into this shame, I don't know how I'll look at him the same way again. Maya tiptoed back to her room, her heart pounding. The tension in the house had reached a point of no return. Whether Aaron was lying or not, the truth was bound to surface, and she wasn't sure any of them were ready for what it would reveal. Life outside the house carried on as usual, yet everything felt tainted by the whispers that followed them wherever they went. It was as though the air itself carried the rumor about Aaron and the pregnant girl. In the grocery store, Elaine noticed how two women leaned toward each other in the produce aisle, their voices dropping when she passed. At the library where she worked, her colleagues smiled politely, but their eyes held a question they didn't dare ask outright. Robert had it worse at the high school. Students snickered when he entered the classroom, whispering among themselves. He caught fragments of conversations, Aaron's name, the word baby, and the occasional crude remark. It ate at him, the loss of respect, the intrusion of private family matters into his professional life. He grew short-tempered, snapping at students over small infractions. In the teacher's lounge, colleagues approached him delicately, pretending to talk about other things but circling around the subject. He kept his head down, but he could feel judgment in every nod and every hushed laugh. Maya felt it too, though in different ways. At college, her friends approached her with hesitant curiosity. One afternoon in the cafeteria, her closest friend, Jenna, asked quietly, "So, is it true about Aaron?" Maya froze, her tray of food suddenly unappealing. She mumbled that she didn't know, that her family was still figuring things out, but the damage was already done. Soon, she noticed how others glanced at her when she walked into class, some with pity, some with a hint of amusement, as though her brother's scandal was entertainment. At night, she scrolled through her phone, dreading what she might find. Sure enough, on local community pages, there were vague posts, half hints about young men running from responsibility and girls left to fend for themselves. Names weren't mentioned, but everyone in town seemed to know who the posts were about. It felt like an invisible weight pressing down on her chest. Meanwhile, Aaron carried himself with the same careless swagger he always had, or at least tried to. He went out late, hung around with friends, and laughed loudly at jokes no one else found funny. But Maya noticed the subtle changes. He stayed off social media entirely, as if he didn't want to see the comments. He avoided certain neighborhoods where he might run into people connected to Lila. And when their mother mentioned going to church on Sunday, Aaron refused, muttering that he didn't need to deal with the stares. Elaine tried to keep up appearances. She still smiled at neighbors, still chatted about the weather or upcoming events, but she could tell their conversations were shorter now, tighter. Invitations to gatherings stopped coming. When she waved to Mrs. Patterson, the elderly woman across the street who usually offered cookies and warm greetings, she received only a curt nod in return. It hurt Elaine more than she admitted. Robert, for his part, stopped speaking much at home. He came in late from work, ate dinner silently, and retreated to his study. Maya often passed by his door and saw him sitting with his head in his hands, papers untouched. It frightened her, the way his silence weighed heavier than any of his old lectures. The only one who seemed untouched, at least on the surface, was Aaron. But even his friends had started to react. One night, Maya overheard him arguing on the phone in his room. His voice was hushed but angry. She caught phrases like, "You think I'd stick around for that?" and "Don't bring her up to me again." His tone was defensive, brittle. After he hung up, she heard a heavy thud, his fist slamming the wall. Then came the neighbor's children. One Saturday morning, Maya was walking back from the store when two boys from down the street passed her. They whispered loudly enough for her to hear. "That's Aaron's sister, right? The one whose brother knocked someone up." They laughed and kept walking, not caring how red her face turned. She hurried home, her throat burning, ashamed of something she hadn't even done. At the dinner table that night, she tried to bring it up. "People are talking about us everywhere," she said, her voice shaking. "It's not just in the house anymore. Everyone thinks it's true." Aaron smirked, shoving food into his mouth. "Let them think whatever they want. Who cares? People have always talked about me. Doesn't change the truth." Robert slammed his fork down. "That's exactly the problem. You don't care. You don't understand that this doesn't just follow you. It follows all of us. Your mother, your sister, me." Elaine reached out, placing her hand over Robert's. "Enough, please. Arguing won't solve this." But her own eyes were red-rimmed, betraying the toll it was taking on her. The days blurred together like this: work, school, whispers, accusations, tension. And all the while, Lila remained absent, a shadow hovering at the edge of their lives. She hadn't appeared at the house, hadn't called directly, but her presence was felt everywhere. In the rumors, in the shame, in the way Aaron avoided looking anyone in the eye. Maya started to wonder if Aaron was waiting for the whole thing to blow over, if he believed that silence and time would erase the story. But every day, the whispers grew louder, and the walls of denial began to close in. The tension at home grew unbearable. Each family member carried their own theory, their own suspicion, as if the truth had become a puzzle with missing pieces scattered across the town. What made it worse was that nobody trusted Aaron completely, not even Elaine, who tried hardest to see the good in him. Elaine was the first to voice her doubts openly. One late evening, while the house was quiet, she sat at the kitchen table with Maya, the soft hum of the refrigerator filling the silence. She clasped her hands together, her eyes far away. "I can't shake the feeling that she's telling the truth," Elaine admitted. "I know Aaron insists otherwise, but the way he avoids the subject, the way he gets angry whenever we bring her up, it doesn't feel right." Maya hesitated. "Do you really think he'd lie about something this big?" Elaine's voice trembled. "He's lied about smaller things. Why wouldn't he lie about this if he's scared? Maybe he thinks admitting it will ruin his future. Or maybe he doesn't want to accept responsibility." She shook her head. "But I saw the way Lila looked at him. That wasn't a girl making up stories. That was someone hurt." Maya sat in silence, conflicted. She remembered the fleeting softness in Aaron's face when Lila had once joined them for dinner. But she also knew her brother's pride. He would sooner cut off his own hand than admit weakness. Robert, however, had an entirely different suspicion. He confronted Aaron one night in the garage, away from Elaine and Maya. His voice was low, angry. "Tell me the truth, son. Did you pay her off? Did you give her money to keep quiet? And now she's using this pregnancy to get more." Aaron stared at him in disbelief. "Are you serious? You think I'd waste money on her? I barely had enough for myself." Robert wasn't convinced. "I've seen this before. People think they can make a mess and cover it up with lies and bargains. Did you strike some deal with her, Aaron? Is that why you're so quick to call her a liar?" Aaron's face reddened. "You think I'm capable of that? That I'd try to bribe her?" "I think," Robert said coldly, "you're capable of anything if it means protecting yourself." Aaron stormed out, slamming the door so hard the walls shook. Robert stood there, his hands trembling, unsure whether his anger came from his son's words or his own lack of faith in him. Meanwhile, Maya overheard whispers outside her college one afternoon. Two of Lila's friends were sitting on a bench, their voices carrying. "She swears it's his," one girl said. "She says she wouldn't lie about something like this. But honestly, even if it isn't, it's a good way to make him finally pay attention." The other girl laughed softly. Knowing Lila, she wouldn't make this up, but she also knows drama follows her. Maybe she's exaggerating. Maya walked past them quickly, her mind spinning. Was it possible that Lila was both truthful and manipulative? That she could genuinely believe Aaron was the father while also enjoying the chaos it caused? Elaine's doubts, Robert's suspicions, Maya's confusion. It all came to a head when Lila finally showed up again. It was a Saturday afternoon. The family was in the living room, silent as usual, when the doorbell rang. Aaron groaned, muttering about idiots selling things. But when Maya opened the door, there she was. Lila stood on the porch, her coat buttoned tightly, her face pale. She looked exhausted, but her eyes burned with determination. "I need to talk to him," she said, her voice firm. Aaron's face drained of color. "No, you need to leave. Right now." But Robert intervened. "No, Aaron. She's here. Let her speak." The next half hour was chaos. Lila sat at the edge of the couch, her hands shaking as she explained her side. She said she wasn't here for money, wasn't here for pity. She just wanted him to accept responsibility. "I'm not making this up," she said, tears brimming in her eyes. "I don't want anything from you except honesty. You were with me. You know what we had. You can't pretend it didn't happen." Aaron shot up from his seat, pacing like a caged animal. "We were together, sure, but not like that. Not the way you're saying. You're twisting things, Lila. You're trying to trap me." Elaine whispered, almost to herself. "She doesn't sound like she's lying." Robert interrupted sharply. "Or maybe she's desperate. People do strange things when they're cornered." Maya sat frozen, her heart racing, as the accusations bounced around the room. The truth felt slippery, impossible to catch. Lila cried quietly, Aaron shouted louder, Elaine pleaded, and Robert scowled. Finally, Lila stood. She wiped her tears, her voice shaking but resolute. "If you won't admit it now, the truth will come out eventually. You can't hide forever." Then she walked out, leaving the family in stunned silence. Aaron collapsed into the chair, burying his face in his hands. Elaine looked at him with something close to pity, Robert with raw suspicion, and Maya with a knot of confusion in her chest. 3 different interpretations, 3 different truths, and not one of them certain. The house became a battlefield after Lila's visit. Every word spoken was loaded, every silence louder than thunder. Robert and Aaron could not occupy the same room without colliding. Elaine tried to mediate, but her voice grew weaker each day, and Maya found herself retreating more and more into the safety of her bedroom. The breaking point came on a Wednesday night. Dinner was tense as usual, the sound of forks scraping against plates the only conversation. Then Robert put his fork down with a deliberate clang. "I've made my decision," he said flatly. "I can't live under the same roof with lies. If Aaron insists on denying the truth while this girl parades around saying otherwise, then I'm leaving until it's resolved." Elaine gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "Robert, you can't." "I can," he interrupted. His voice was like stone. "I won't sit here while he drags our name through the mud. I won't watch him humiliate us further. If he wants to behave like a child, then he can do it without me in this house." Aaron shot up from his seat, fury in his eyes. "Oh, of course. Run away, Dad. That's your solution? You think leaving makes you the righteous one? You're just proving what I've known all along. You've never believed in me. You've always thought I was nothing." Robert stood as well, towering over him. "Belief has to be earned, Aaron. And all you've earned is suspicion. A man doesn't deny and scream when faced with responsibility. A man faces it." Their shouting escalated until Elaine burst into tears, begging them to stop. But it was useless. Robert grabbed his coat and stormed out, the front door slamming behind him so hard the windows rattled. The absence of his presence was immediate, like a weight ripped away but leaving a painful void. Elaine sat at the table sobbing quietly, and Aaron stormed into his room, slamming the door. Maya sat frozen, feeling like the walls themselves might collapse. Days turned into weeks with Robert gone. He stayed at his brother's place across town, refusing Elaine's pleas to return. When Maya visited him once, he was cold but honest. "I'll come back when the truth is clear," he said. "Until then, I won't pretend we're Elaine reached for the envelope, hesitated, then pulled her hand back as if it might burn her. "Shouldn't your father be here for this?" she asked softly. Aaron scoffed. Of course she'd bring something like this when he's gone. Convenient. Lila's eyes filled with tears. "I didn't choose the timing. I just couldn't wait anymore." The room was thick with silence. Outside, a car passed, its headlights casting brief shadows across the wall. Inside, everything felt suspended. Maya's heartbeat thudded in her ears as she looked from her mother to her brother, then back to the trembling girl by the door. Finally, Elaine pushed the envelope toward Aaron. If you're so sure she's lying, open it. Look at it. Put an end to this. Aaron's eyes locked on the envelope, but he didn't move. His hands stayed folded, his shoulders stiff. I don't need to prove myself, he muttered. I know the truth. She's lying. That's all there is to it. Lila let out a broken laugh, half bitter, half despairing. You can't even look. You're terrified, aren't you? Terrified of you? Aaron shot back, his voice rising. Please. You're nothing but a drama queen who's obsessed with dragging me down. Then prove it. Lila shouted, her voice echoing through the kitchen. Her eyes burned into him, daring him to break. Maya couldn't breathe. She wanted him to open it, wanted to see the truth laid bare. But part of her feared it too. What if Lila was right? What if everything her brother had denied for months collapsed in a single sheet of paper? Elaine stood abruptly, tears streaking down her cheeks. I can't do this anymore. I can't sit here watching both of you tear each other apart while your father refuses to come home. I don't know what's worse, the possibility that she's lying, or the possibility that you are. Aaron stared down at the table, his fists clenched, his chest heaving. Lila wiped her face with her sleeve, her body trembling with exhaustion. Maya's eyes drifted to the envelope again. It sat there silently, holding answers none of them were ready for. She reached out, her fingers brushing against it, but she didn't open it. She couldn't. The family was frozen in limbo. A father gone, a mother breaking, a brother defiant, a girl desperate, and a sister caught between them all. The envelope remained sealed, and in that silence, the truth waited, heavy and unbearable, leaving the question echoing in every corner of the house. Was Aaron telling the truth? Or was Lila? No one dared to find out.